Good evening. Right now, Iran is facing one of the most dangerous waves of unrest in years. Mass protests have spread across major cities. Security forces have responded with force, and now the United States is sending strong warnings to Tehran. The big question is simple but serious. What is the U.S. planning to do next? And could this situation turn into a much bigger conflict? To understand that, we first need to look at what caused these protests and why they are different from past unrest. These protests did not start from a single event. They are the result of long-term pressure building inside the country. First, Iran's economy is under severe stress. Inflation is high. Jobs are limited. Basic living costs are rising faster than salaries. Second, many young people feel they have no future. Restrictions on social life, online platforms, and political expression have increased frustration. Third, political anger has been growing for years, but now it has reached a breaking point. When people began gathering in public, the demonstrations spread quickly through social media and local networks. Soon, protests were no longer isolated. They became nationwide. Instead of allowing dialogue, Iranian authorities responded with heavy security measures. Police and special units were deployed in large numbers. Internet access was restricted in several areas. Thousands of people were arrested. Human rights organizations reported large numbers of injuries and deaths. While exact numbers are difficult to confirm, the scale of the crackdown shocked the international community. This aggressive response did not calm the situation. In many cases, it made public anger even stronger. And this is where global attention, especially from the United States, became intense. The United States has a long and complicated relationship with Iran. For decades, both countries have accused each other of hostile actions. There are disagreements over nuclear programs, regional influence, and military activity in the Middle East. So when protests turned deadly, U.S. officials quickly spoke out. American leaders publicly condemned the Iranian government's actions. They stated that they support the Iranian people's right to protest. At the United Nations, U.S. representatives used strong language. They said that all options remain on the table. This phrase is very important in diplomacy. It usually means that military, economic, and political actions are all being considered. But saying something and actually doing it are two very different things. When U.S. officials say this, they are sending multiple messages at once. First, they are warning Iran that continued violence could lead to consequences. This is meant to pressure the government into slowing or stopping the crackdown. Second, they are signaling to U.S. allies that Washington is paying attention and is ready to act if needed. Third, they are trying to influence internal dynamics inside Iran by showing protesters that the world is watching. However, military action is not usually the first choice. Direct conflict with Iran would be extremely risky. Iran has strong regional allies and military capabilities. Any strike could trigger retaliation across the Middle East. Because of that, most analysts believe the U.S. is more likely to increase economic pressure and diplomatic isolation rather than immediate military action. Still, even limited moves can raise tensions very quickly. Iranian leaders strongly rejected American statements. They accused the United States of trying to interfere in internal affairs. Officials warned that any foreign aggression would be met with strong retaliation. At the same time, there were mixed signals. Some Iranian officials suggested that diplomatic talks could still happen, but only if threats stop. This creates a dangerous situation. Both sides are showing strength, but neither wants full-scale war. Yet public pressure, political pride, and regional politics make calm decision-making difficult. And this is exactly why the next steps from Washington matter so much. So now we reach the most important question. If the U.S. does not want war, but also does not want to appear weak, what choices are left? In part two, we will break down the three most likely strategies the United States could use next, and what each option would mean for Iran, the Middle East, and global stability. When tensions rise like this, U.S. policymakers usually focus on three main strategies. Each option carries different risks and consequences. Let us examine them one by one. This is the most likely and safest short-term move. The United States already has many sanctions on Iran, but new restrictions can still be added. These can target government officials, military organizations, financial institutions, technology, linked to surveillance and control. The goal is to weaken the government's ability to operate and to limit funding for security forces. Sanctions are designed to increase pressure without firing a single shot. However, sanctions also have limits. They can hurt ordinary citizens more than political leaders. And Iran has learned over time how to survive under economic pressure. So while sanctions can signal strength, they may not immediately change government behavior. Still, this option allows the U.S. to act without triggering military escalation. The second strategy is to build a global coalition against Iran's actions. This includes emergency United Nations meetings, joint statements from allied countries, human rights investigations, travel bans on officials. Diplomatic pressure can damage a country's global reputation and reduce political support. It can also encourage neutral countries to reduce trade and cooperation. But diplomacy is slow. It does not stop violence overnight, and some powerful countries may block strong action at the United Nations for political reasons. So while this approach looks calm and responsible, its impact may be limited in the short term. Still, it is important for shaping global opinion and long-term accountability. Option 3, military signaling without direct war. This is the most dangerous option, but also one that is often used as a warning. Military signaling means moving naval forces closer to the region, increasing surveillance flights, strengthening allied bases. The message is simple. The U.S. is ready if the situation becomes worse. This does not mean war is coming tomorrow. It means the U.S. is creating pressure through visible strength. However, this is risky. Military movements can be misinterpreted. One mistake or accident can quickly escalate into open conflict. Iran could respond by increasing activity through allied groups in the region. This could spread instability beyond Iran's borders. Because of these risks, most experts believe military signaling would only be used if violence increases dramatically or if U.S. interests are directly threatened. Any U.S. move toward Iran affects the entire region. Countries like Israel, Saudi Arabia, and others are watching closely. If tensions rise, these countries may increase their own military readiness. This raises the chance of miscalculations and proxy conflicts. Shipping routes, oil supplies, and global markets can also be affected. That means Americans may feel economic consequences even if no war begins. So this is not just a distant political issue. It has real global impact. What this means for the Iranian people inside Iran, ordinary citizens are caught in the middle. They face pressure from security forces on one side and economic hardship from international sanctions on the other. Some people hope international pressure will force change. Others fear that foreign involvement will only make things worse. History shows that external pressure alone rarely creates stable political reform. Real change usually comes from internal political movements, not foreign intervention. That is why many analysts say the outcome depends more on what happens inside Iran than on what the U.S. decides. Final assessment: what is most likely to happen? Next, based on past behavior and current risks, the most likely U.S. strategy will include expanded sanctions, strong diplomatic statements, international coordination. Direct military action remains the least likely option unless the situation dramatically escalates. The U.S. wants to avoid another major conflict in the Middle East. At the same time, it does not want to appear silent when human rights abuses are reported. So Washington is trying to walk a very narrow line between pressure and restraint. Whether that strategy works will depend on how events unfold inside Iran over the coming weeks. The situation in Iran is not just a local crisis. It is a test of how global powers respond to internal unrest. without turning it into international war. What happens next could shape regional stability for years to come, and the decisions made now on both sides will matter far beyond today's headlines.